So, some of this might sound redundant, but let's just go through the questions. Number one,
No
where do
problem.
you fall on the queer spectrum?
Um, I don't know. First of all, I don't really know what a queer spectrum is,
Oh, sure.
but I think I would call myself a classic OG gay.
Mhm.
Um, I just turned 61 March 1st, and I'm kind of just, I'm very accepting and open to whatever's new and happening, in the gay community and in the queer community. And
Mm.
to be completely honest and candid, I'm just getting used to using the word queer because for me growing up, that was a real derogatory and very, very, very derogatory term and a slur. One of my friends said, when this all started, he goes, wait a minute, wait, that's what they used to call us when they beat us up.
Right.
And um, and I get the idea of taking it back, but it still resonates as a negative, even by the Webster's definition, old definition of queer. It's something odd or not normal, and I feel like I'm perfectly normal.
Yeah.
So, so there's a dichotomy there. But I get it. Look, one of my godchildren, one of my friend's daughters, I mean, she's just recently graduated from college, and she was educating us as she went through this whole thing with all these, with the pronouns coming in, and when her mother, was very intelligent, she was like, "Wait a minute, it's not improper grammar to say, they or them." And then the husband said, "Well, when you ask, you like, what you go see the doctor, you say, what did they say?" You don't
Yes.
say what did he say or she say. You go to that and like, okay, that makes sense. That solidified that argument. Um, and she went, I love her to death, but we knew she had a girlfriend, and then she had a boyfriend, and then she had another girlfriend, and then one time I think she described herself as a WWLW, and I went, "What's that?" And she goes, "Well, that's women who love women," and I went, "That's a lesbian, honey." You didn't invent it, that's my favorite thing. When you're young, you think everything you're the first person to experience it.
Mhm.
Yeah, my one of my friend's grandmothers said, "You think Madonna invented sex, please?" It's you know, so I get it. I I was raised in a very, I don't want to say very conservative, but they were conservative family. Not overly religious, but we did go to church. Um, I don't remember ever, hearing, that I would be damned for being gay or anything like that. But it was in the back of my consciousness that this isn't right or it's not accepted, mainly because that's how society saw it.
Yes.
We were never depicted. Growing up, I never saw any representation in any book I read, in any movie I saw, any TV show. If it were, it was a flamboyant, queen like Uncle Arthur on Bewitched, something like that, where it was a joke. It was not, and I can't believe in my lifetime I have seen such a change where, and we're still working for it to see representation. And all these people that are these idiots that are crying, oh, they're trying to, what do they call it? Program us. What is it called? They call it now. Um,
Indoctrinate.
Indoctrinate. I'm like, excuse me? What do you call what I went through my entire life until I realized that I could be out and gay and happy? I was trying to be indoctrinated to be straight. And you
Mm.
can't make someone a sexuality. You can't make someone trans. You can't make someone. They are
Yes.
just are. And I saw a meme somewhere once, or no, a little interview where I can't remember the woman's name, but she said maybe we see so many more trans people now, um, because she equated it to many years ago, like in the 50s or 60s, when they stopped forcing people to be right-handed,
Yes.
that it's now just, we're saying you don't have to be, this one gender or that. We're not forcing it. And it's just, I think, as human beings, we're evolving, so who knows what's next?
You
That's
know,
what I
I
think,
just
and I
read.
I
I just
just babble
read.
because how did that answer the question of the queer spectrum? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I try to stay humble about it because as we grow older and culture evolves, stuff like this is
Mhm.
going to keep coming up. So it's things about being
Yeah,
gay or being trans. To me, I feel like I'm on the up and up, but there's going to come something afterwards where I'm going to have to work for it in order to be tolerant and sensitive in the way I ask for people to be toward me.
exactly. So true. So true. And if you've if if people really follow the teachings of whatever religion, usually most religions are about loving and accepting and you know being kind to each other and helping each other along through this journey. If they would really practice it, it would be a lot easier.
I think so too. Well, let me ask you something a little more personal. What do we
Sure.
need to understand about your story as a person?
Well, I wrote a play that kind of that deals with it. I wrote a play called Dear Mr. Williams, and it's my story of growing up in New Orleans and coming to terms with it, being gay, and all of many other things, but also told through Tennessee Williams' words. So I go back and forth between Tennessee Williams and he guided me to get out. And I really think, if I would have stayed in New Orleans where I was raised in the society that I was raised in, I would have been what I call uptown straight.
Mm,
It's like married, but then go down to the French Quarter and find a guy or whatever. And
mm,
I maybe would have been dead because that was right at the AIDS epidemic. I lived, like I like to say, I survived the AIDS epidemic, I survived 9/11, I survived Katrina and the pandemic. I'm done. Don't give me anything.
Too many disasters.
Right? That's why my friends in California say, don't come here. Don't come here.
Yeah, yeah. I was living in Mississippi back during Katrina, so I know what you're saying about that one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was no fun. We had
Mm-mm.
just opened our store. My husband and I had opened up it's 21 years now, our shop on Magazine Street in New Orleans. And it's called Hazelnut. We named it after my grandmother. Her name was Hazel and she was a
Mhm.
nut. But it was right after we had opened it and Katrina hit. And Tom had some adjusting to do. It was, having lived in New York for so long and then coming here, it was although New Orleans is a wonderful, culturally rich city, it's a completely different vibe than New York. And when this hit, I said, well, here's our out. We can close shop and go back to New York because I'm not giving up now, not when the city needs us. And that
Right.
really made me dig my heels in and his heels in. We really stayed and tried to help rebuild and become really, part of the community. My favorite is the legendary Leah Chase, and that based the Frog and the Princess kind of on with the frog. What was the Disney one about that's set in New
Princess
Orleans?
and the Frog.
Princess and the Frog. The whole idea of the restaurant was based on Miss Leah Chase, of her restaurant, and she was like the first African American entrepreneur, owner, restaurant owner in New Orleans, and she actually served to white people during segregation. So she
Wow.
could get in trouble for that. But she was just her son just passed away. He was a wonderful man too, but she was like this iconic New Orleanian and we would bump into her at certain benefits and would go to her restaurant, Dookie Chase. And one time I was telling her, I said, Tom's from Pennsylvania, but he makes an incredible gumbo. And she goes,
Mm.
we're going to have a gumbo contest. And Tom said, over my dead body, am I going to, make gumbo with you? And then one time we bumped into her after Katrina. And she said to Tom, she says, now, wait a minute, you're not from here, right? And she goes, no, ma'am, I'm from Pennsylvania. But she goes, you came back after Katrina and helped rebuild on. She goes, I now dub you an honorary New Orleanian. And
Aw,
and that just made Tom, it just made, I think it made his whole experience here even that much richer.
that's wonderful. And I love whenever I hear or read about your relationship with him. It sounds wonderful.
It is, but like everyone said, like any relationship, it has its ups and downs and it's work,
Mm.
but it's I
Mhm.
think the best work. We really were very lucky. We met when we were 26 years old. We were doing a Vita in Akron, Ohio. I was already there rehearsing a couple days before. He was in the ensemble and covered one of the leads, and he didn't know where the rehearsal was, and he literally looked at the roster and saw that I was playing Che, and we didn't know each other. He knocked on the door just to get directions, and we kind of like looked at each other and went, "Bing," and that was it.
Wow. That's
And it was
crazy that if that little thing hadn't happened, you might never have met.
exactly, exactly. And listen, I was still kind of closeted at the time, so
Mm.
it was. I have a chapter in the book I wrote. I wrote a book called "She Ain't Heavy, She's My Mother," and there's a chapter about how Tom and I met. It's called "Don't Cry for Me," Akron, Ohio, because we met doing a Vita at the Carousel Dinner Theater in Ohio. But
Wow,
he stuck by me. He stuck with me, and and then we've been together ever since. So
that's wonderful.
yeah.
Well, I have a question about your acting, not when you started acting, but could you take us back to when you first realized that you could have a career as an actor? Where were you and what were you doing? Who were you with? Why was that time so important?
That's a really great question. I always loved theater. I loved performing as a child. I did, community theater and, kids theater when I was younger. And then I don't know what it was. Either my father didn't want me, I think he didn't want me hanging around all those, queer people. Um, and saw that, I mean, they had to have some knowledge because I was sent to a child psychologist when I was little because I was always playing with my mom's hoop skirt or her wigs and out and put on makeup. And when I came out of the therapy, I was turned into like this little banker. I like was dressed so conservatively. It was ridiculous. And I tried to play sports and all this stuff. And it was my high school drama teacher, Kitty Greenberg, who cornered me in the hallway, English hall, and just really said, "When are you going to audition for one of my plays? You know you want to. You know you'd be good. So,
Mm.
time's ticking away." And I did, and I was hooked. It wasn't until I was in college and a friend's mother was an agent. She had opened up a modeling and talent agency, and they said, "You ought to go talk to her." So I did, and I started working as, an actor. Like I did commercials and I would do modeling stuff. I really wanted, the funny thing is, that was in a modeling explosion, when modeling in the early 80s was like the thing, Brooke
Oh,
Shields and
yeah.
all. And, but I had everything going for me. I had the right, build. I was, the right height, the right weight. I just didn't have the looks. And it just that there was always, and I enjoyed fashion so much. So
Mm.
I really got into, but I did love acting. So that was my, my big passion. And it wasn't until then that I realized that you could have a career and do it. I was also in a band. I was in a new wave band in New Orleans
Oh,
called the
wow.
Singles. What else? I was just wanted to be on stage. I don't know why. I just enjoyed. I'd get nervous, but there was something freeing about it because deep down inside, I was kind of shy and being very closeted. It was a way to express myself, where it wasn't just me. It was like a character or I was performing. Um, and I my father really did not want me to be an actor. My mother was very supportive. I mean, he was supportive. He'd come to the plays, but like when it was getting close to graduation in college, he's like, "No, what are you going to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm moving to New York." He's like,
Mm.
"Wait, what are you doing?" And it's this is in the play, but I was doing a play at the community theaters my junior year, and at Le Petit Theater that I ended up being on the board and helped save it from closure. Uh, and they were doing a big benefit. We were doing Godspell, and there was going to be a big gala to. They were dedicating the foyer, the lobby, to Helen Hayes because she was coming through to go on one of these, theater cruises. But she was stopping in New Orleans. They were going to honor her, name the lobby after her, and the woman who was organizing the whole gala fell ill, and they were scrambling, and literally they made an announcement to the cast, does anybody know anyone who could take the reins? And I raised my hand and said, my mother can totally do this.
Mm.
This is what she does. She, on boards and stuff like that. And also she was a very talented performer and just a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Mm.
So she did. And my mother was one of the most charming, true Southern belles. It wasn't fake. It wasn't, put on. It was she was just ingrained, like, that she was just a lady through and through, and but strong. I mean, strong. Uh,
Mm.
and she took it over and, like, she met Helen Hayes and they hit it off, and my father was well enough. He was in and out of, illness all through, God, through my middle school and high school and college. Um, and after the performance, Helen Hayes said, "Now wait a minute, are you related to the young man who played Judas? It was Godspell." And my mom said, "That's our son." And my mom said she really wants to go to New York and be an actor. And my father said, "Well, we're trying to discourage him. It's a tough business." And she looked at my father and said, "You should encourage him. He's very good." So the next day, Helen Hayes over brunch with my parents convinced my father to let me move to New York. And and when I opened in my first Broadway show, she sent me a telegram saying, "Welcome to Broadway.
Oh,
May you have a triumphant stay," it's framed on the wall.
that's so sweet. I would keep that too. Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of wow.
Well, as far as encouraging that early self, what would you tell yourself at the beginning of your career versus where you are now?
You know what? It's my one real regret is that I didn't go to a conservatory or a real a program, acting program like,
Mm.
like Carnegie Mellon or Cincinnati Conservatory or Juilliard or Yale or something. I didn't even try. My father was so ill, they did not expect him to live. My senior year, they tried an experimental drug, and that's when all that was going on. So I
Oh,
just decided I'll stay home and go to Tulane, and I'll be able to be there for my dad and for my mom.
mm.
And looking back, that was my one real regret. I got to New York and I thought about I was going to think about auditioning, for Yale or Juilliard for, graduate. And I got my first Broadway show and I thought, well, I'm working. So I just kept on working. And and I blinked my eyes and then now I'm this age. So
Yeah,
that's my one regret that
I
I did
see.
do that. That's what I would tell myself, go, to the try at least for the best education in
Mm.
act. But I had wonderful teachers when I got to New York and some at Tulane, but I really had to learn that the big thing is the process. I am just so result oriented that I forget even at this age that you start at 0 and you don't achieve 100 right at the start.
Oh,
It's a
yes,
you know. So yeah, that's what I would tell myself.
I
I would
see. I am kind of curious because you have this interior design and home furnishings business.
Mhm.
How does your background in interior design inform what you do as an actor?
Well, to be honest, it's not, I'm not, well, I have interior design, but that's not what we do at the store. It's mainly
Oh,
just
sure.
a retail home furnishings and gift shop. That's what it is. I have done, I've always loved it. I've always loved it. My father was building a house, our family home, and my mother was going through the process with decorators and all that stuff. I really was fascinated by, how that all everything came together. And I remember going to Houston, or no, Dallas, at the Dallas market, when they went to go buy stuff, and it was really interesting. I've always loved beautiful homes and architecture. In New Orleans, I have some of my friends, lived in the Garden District where these beautiful old homes with all these antiques and great draperies. And I thought, wow, that's just so cool.
Mm.
We lived in a mid-century modern house on the lake growing up, and then my father built a bigger, more if it is what it is. It was a colonial,
Yeah.
home with the big columns and everything and shutters. And it was little things like I remember when they were doing the windows and the doors, and my mother and father they showed them these shutters to put on the side that didn't close, that they were just decorative
Mm.
on the sides of the windows. And my mom and my father were like, wait a minute, why would they not close and function? If a hurricane or a storm's coming, you close
Yeah.
them and you lock them. That's how it's supposed to be. And look around, you'll see some homes where they have these these big and these little tiny shutters that are just decoration.
Yes.
They don't serve any function. And I found that interesting, and I learned while they were building it because my mother wanted higher ceilings at that time. There were no Home Depots, there were no places like that. They had to mill the wood. I mean, all the moldings and all that. And I found that all fascinating, and then the different fabrics. And I also always loved fashion, and I would design dresses for my mom and costumes for Mardi Gras. And
Mm,
I loved all that. And I was, when I was in New York, I was taking classes at Parsons School of Design. And I just got my first Broadway show, and went down that route. But I still design, and I love to sketch, and a friend of mine just found some of my sketches. He's a wonderful artist in Memphis, and
mm.
he's coming to here to do a show. And he said, I was going through these old things from college, and he goes, is this your fashion sketches? And there were these really great sweaters, and it was, I really was like, yes, that is. I remember doing that.
Oh,
So he's gonna bring them down, for me.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was fun. It was like just like, you know, window into my distant youth.
Wow. Well, as far as your youth, your entire life, I did want to ask you about the Tennessee Williams play. What do you remember most about performing in Dear Mr. Williams?
Oh, I I hope to do it again. There's some the producers that want to do it in New York. So I'm hopeful. I have to get myself back in shape because it is exhausting to do it was an hour and 40 minutes of just me on stage.
Mm,
It was really exhausting, and I thank God I lost a lot of weight, which I have to take off again
mhm.
because I've recently had foot surgery and I've not been able to do anything.
Oh,
Um, what did I like most about it? It was so challenging, and there's a big emotional uh climax where it's allowing yourself to go there honestly, where it's not histrionic, or it's not it's this big emotional part of the show, but you don't want to, I don't know, project it. You don't want to like make it obvious. And so to
mm,
make it organic every night was the challenge. And it honestly, because it was my story and it dealt with truths that that I experienced and other people experience. It was that did make it easier because it
mm.
was organic. One of my favorite things, many people have said to me, gosh, this is my story. It's very
Oh,
similar. And another friend of mine who's a director in New York said, it's this little window that very like a bunch of the gay men had experienced at that time. It was like, right as you're coming out, right as you're dealing with it, AIDS came in. I mean,
mm,
it was like the door opened and it shut right in our faces. Um, but my favorite thing that someone said to me, they came in the shop, and this young lady said, I've been meaning to tell you this, Bryan. She said, my husband and I came to see your play, and we loved it. And his father had recently passed away, and his father was gay.
mm.
And she said after the show, after the curtain, curtain call, and he just sat there and tears were rolling down his face. And she
Oh,
said, honey, what's wrong? What's wrong? He goes, I think I now understand my father. And
wow.
I just started to cry. So, well, that's worth it. That's worth
Oh,
everything. That kind of made it. And doing the research, it's one of how it came about was very funny. There's a Tennessee Williams Festival here that I've been involved with over the years. And they usually, in the week of the festival, they have what they call a tribute reading, where they pick a theme of Tennessee Williams' works. And they have different people, actors, writers, whoever, read different excerpts. And one year it was the Italian Summer of Tennessee Williams. So it was anything he had to do with Italy. Rose Tattoo. But I read these letters that he had written to friends from his first trip to Rome after the war. And they were so brilliantly written and so evocative and a little essential too. But
mm,
and they were so actable. I mean, just his prose is so actable. So I went to the head of the festival and I said, Paul, next year is a tricentennial of New Orleans. Maybe we should do an evening of, everything's of New Orleans. He said, why don't you write it? I'm like, be careful
Mm,
what you wish for. So I started to write it, and as I started to write it and do the research, I realized there were certain moments in my life after seeing a Tennessee Williams play or film that it really hit me.
mm,
It really kind of did. And then, of course, I went with poetic license and, interjecting his words through it to get me out, to get to New York. But one of the favorite things, I found this quote that was buried in his notebooks. And like, he's towards the end, it was, he was raging alcoholic
mm,
and drug user. But this one, and I put it in a play and I love it. You reach a point in your life when you look in the mirror. What you see is all you are ever going to be. Now, either you accept that or you kill yourself, or you stop looking in mirrors,
mm. Hmm,
which
that's great.
is so profound. I'm like,
Yes.
here's the truth. Here are your options. Choose wisely, you know?
I love how you used the quote from him too. That's wonderful.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
Now, if you could revisit any character from your acting past, who would it be?
Oh, in what way revisit? Get to do it again or just
If
to,
you could do it again, I don't mean a new production with a new story, but if you could
right.
revisit an old role.
Gosh, there's so many that I loved doing. I never like not enjoyed what I was doing, and I'm very
Mm,
grateful for that.
mm,
There were some little plays that that never went anywhere that like we are trying to make this work and it is not working. It's not my fault.
yes.
Um, gosh, I loved the experience of Jeffrey. The character was fun to play, a true innocent, but I'm trying to think. Then there's others. Well, of course, Salvatore. I think Salvatore Romano on Mad Men,
Of
you know,
course.
he could have, he could have a spin-off, but that was not to happen. Um,
Sure.
I really loved two of the roles that I loved playing a lot were I was the understudy. I was the understudy in Sunset Boulevard and for Joe Gillis, which is a total departure from my personal self. He was a jaded, womanizing writer, just bitter and kind of a little sort of gigolo to it. I think it's battered around by Hollywood, and it was fun to play that part. It was really fun and to sing those great Andrew Lloyd Webber songs on that gorgeous set and wear these suits that were God made perfectly for
Mm,
him. And another one was the Scarlet Pimpernel. I stood by for the lead in that, and it was just a great character. You got
mm,
to play the fop, you got to play the spy, you got to play a romantic lead and swashbuckling sword fights and singing these huge ballads. And I know this sounds a little egomaniacal, but in that show, the way it was staged at the end, we do the curtain call happens, and everyone takes their bow. The final bow happens, and the curtain comes down, and everyone leaves except for the actor playing the Scarlet Pimpernel, playing Percy.
mm.
And it's a solo. You got to take a solo bow on a Broadway stage. It was kind
Oh,
of, it was that was kind of wow, you know.
wow. That does sound amazing. Um, I did want to ask you about Sal, not about anything from the past, but see, there was an Esquire article in 2015, and I loved your imagined future for Sal Romano. And I
Yeah.
wonder where would Sal be if he were the same age as you today?
Sal, today, I think he would be deceased by now.
Well, I don't mean exactly today, but if he were the same age as you in
If
his
he would
era.
have lived, yeah, to be 61, I would love to think that, as time went by, I know that he and Kitty, are divorced. They might have had some children, or at least one, and they reconciled them and remained great friends. One of the advisors on the show actually, had a life very similar to Sal. and he was still good friends with his wife and his daughter, and he and his husband, traveled with them, and it was a family, but just in a different way. And I would just love to think that that's what would have happened to Sal. I would like to think that he would be able to, at least at one point, as I live his true open self.
Yes.
Um, However, in the world of Mad Men, it never really ends happily. So,
Mm,
but if I got to write it, that's what I would. He would be in a caftan in Fire Island having a ball.
yeah. I certainly hope so. He deserves it.
Yes.
Um, Let me ask you about your mother. You had such a strong relationship with her. I love whenever you talk about her. In what
Mhm.
ways are you like your mother?
Oh, I would like to think that I am. She had so many great qualities. I think I inherit also. Um, I'm trying to think. I'm pretty much like her in the sense that I really have never met a stranger that I'm comfortable chatting with, talking with, and experience, learning from other people of all walks of life, and
Mm,
every I mean, she was so open, and because she listened to other people, and that's one thing I need to work on,
mm,
to just really listen. And she was great about that. She was a great conversationalist because she listened. I my Both my parents were
mm.
very generous of heart, and as far as gifts. My father used to think my mother. He said, "Your mother has an, um, identity complex. She thinks she's Santa Claus." Uh, and I am like that. I truly love to give more than I like to receive.
Mm,
I love finding the right thing to give to someone, or being able to support and help someone. It's hard for me to accept. Not that's not true. I can accept nice things and kindness too. Compliments are hard.
I hear you.
But yeah, what else am I like her? I think I have a nice smile. She had a beautiful smile,
Yes.
and she's in her. And I think, I think I am a kind person. I really try to see the good. Although there's a lot of bad out there, I'm trying. I try to find the good. One thing I'm not like my mother. My mother, and I try not to. I try not to, and every once in a while I'll catch myself. Rarely, I've gotten much better, but my mother did not like gossip or talk about other people in a negative
Oh,
way. She
yes.
refused. Um, and a lot of women of that era and of that ilk, of that background, it's what they would do. They'd go have, play cards, or, and my grandmother used to call it playing ladies. Um, but, talk about other people, and she goes, I can never find joy or pleasure in other people's misfortune. It's just not something that, some people do, it's anyway, I'm trying to think of other things. Um, I like pretty things.
Yes.
I love music. I love to dance. She loved to dance. Um, One thing I do like, whenever I post anything about my mom on Facebook, everyone who knew her, they all just still rave about how she could light up a room when she walked in, and she could just, make you feel so special. She
Mm.
made everyone feel like they mattered and they were special. And that is something I'm working on, because it was a true gift, and I learned a lot from her.
Oh, I see. That must be where you get it from.
Mhm.
Well, besides your mom, who else are your role models?
Oh my gosh, that's really a hard one. That's really a hard one.
Mm,
Um, I would like to think, I can't be too specific. I can't think of human. My Aunt Carol, who passed away a couple of years ago, I never heard her say a bad thing about another person, ever,
mm,
ever. Um, Role models, I learned early on, you can't, everyone is fallible.
mm,
That moment when you realize your parents are human, and they're going to make mistakes, And, because at one point you just think they're perfect. And, so I never tried to, like, admire, or worship, someone else's life or career or, too much because you're gonna be let down in some way.
Yes.
But I do love to hear stories of, like, redemption and overcoming adversity and doing the right thing at the right it's like I think people need to stand up, especially now, against this, threat of fascism and authoritarianism in this
Yeah.
country. The people have been too silent for too long, and it's time. Those I guess those are my role models of people that, you know, stand up and not just for themselves, but for those who can't.
Yes. That's a great answer. What is a word you love?
Love.
Love, yes. And what is a word that you hate?
Oh gosh, I'm so ridiculous. I hate. No, let me think of another word that I love. How about I do love redemption.
Oh, yes.
I love that. I love the growth in that word. That it's something positive coming from something that was not positive. A word that I hate. Well, besides hate, um, bigotry.
Mm, mm, mm. What about a sound you love?
A sound I love. Gosh, you know what? You're gonna think this is crazy. Tom's laughter.
Oh,
He
no, that makes total sense. That makes total sense.
He is well, first of all, he makes me laugh. He is so witty and so clever and so bright, and his humor is so dry, and it cracks me up. But he will laugh out loud watching television or
Oh,
a movie. I mean, literally like guffawing, and it cracks me up. I just love the sound of it.
oh, wonderful. That kind of stuff is contagious.
Yeah, yeah. We're watching, I don't know how it started again, but we've started watching Ugly Betty, and I was on like the final two episodes, and
All right.
I was supposed to continue with for a while. I think I was going to be a recurring character, and it was canceled. Like I went to the table read I went to is when they found out it was canceled, and it was like it's over. That's it. And it
You
was so
just got there and it's over.
I know, and but we started watching it from the beginning, and it's an adorable, funny show. And sometimes, Thomas is laughing out loud. We watched during during the lockdown. We watched so many great series from beginning to end, like Mary
Mm,
Tyler Moore and
mm.
um, a bunch of them, and just that getting to laugh. It's laughter is everything to me.
Oh, well, besides the sound of Tom's sadness, what's the sound you hate?
Sound I hate, huh? Gosh, gunfire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, any kind of like weapon explosion thing like that. I just can't stand the sound of that.
Hmm. All right. And if you could take this is a deserted island question, and I think that you should include a stage play if you want. What book, movie, or music or stage play would you take with you if you had to go to a deserted island?
I'd take Anti-Mame, the movie with Rosalind Russell.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's I know it's just it just makes me smile every time it comes on. I have
Mm.
to watch it. I quote it. It's just I know it's not a you know fancy highbrow artsy fartsy thing, but that's what I would take.
Mm.
The movie with Rosalind, I'd take that. Book, hmm, I guess the works of Shakespeare, because there's just it would keep your mind going for a while.
Oh, sure. Hmm. Well, that's good. And I only have a couple of more questions before we
Sure.
wrap it up. How have you learned to see your differences as worthiness?
Wow. Wow. You know, I was very fortunate because I knew at an early age that I was loved unconditionally. I knew
Mm,
it. And my mother and father would say, there's nothing you can do. You know, well, they're basically, we love you no matter what, and you with if whatever you want to be in life, do it, but do it that the best you can. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if you want to be a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger you can be. Now, I didn't even know what a ditch digger did, but
Mhm.
I knew that I was unconditionally loved, and that I also, with going to church and all that stuff, my mother was a firm believer. She says, God does not make junk.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I never thought, I did think, when I was realizing I was gay, I was like, something's wrong here. Something's not, why do I not feel this way about women that I should? You know what I mean? This is how I should.
Mhm.
Like, would be watching Charlie's Angels and I love the outfits and the hairdos. It wasn't like, ooh, I want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I knew that and I fought it like crazy. I thought this will pass, and it never did. So,
Mm. Mhm. And tell me, how would you like to be remembered?
hmm, wow. As just a good person. You
Mhm.
know, I, I as a nice guy. When if people talk about me, I'd like them to say, "Wow, what a great guy." I don't, you know, career and all that stuff is so subjective. We're always at the constant mercy of someone else's opinion. But as a good soul, as a good person, as a kind human being, and empathetic, and uh yeah, that's what I'd like to be known as.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I think you will be. And
Well, thank
for my last question, I just wanted what's next for you and how can we stay up to date with everything you're doing?
Follow me on Instagram, I think is the best, or at Facebook. Because that's how I used to have a website. I don't have it anymore. But let's see, there's a couple of movies in the can that'll be coming out soon,
Mm.
hopefully. The play, Dear Mr. Williams, and I'm waiting to hear on a couple of things. But I post a lot on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is at Bryan_Batt, BRYAN_BATT, and look me up on Facebook. I'm there too.
Wonderful. Are you able to share anything about the couple of movies that are in the can, or does that
One,
have
they
to stay?
just changed the title, and it was formerly called The Best Place in the World, and I can't remember the new title of it, but
Oh,
it's set in Fire Island, and I think it's going to the South by Southwest Film Festival very soon. It was in that. Um, Bill Irwin's in it, Marissa Tomei, and a young actor. I think he's the lead. It's a wonderful love story, set in Provincetown, and I got to film it in Provincetown. Oh gosh, it was 21. No, no. It was 2022. I can't remember when I filmed this, but anyway, yeah, I was thinking it was 22, and it was fall. Yeah, it was so beautiful. I'd only been there once before in the dead of summer, and it was so crowded, and it was, you know, so much going on. And this was just, it wasn't crowded. You needed a little sweater at night, and it was just so charming. I want to go back in the late spring or the early fall again. But God, I wish I could remember the name of the new title. I'm sorry.
well, that's okay. I'm sure you'll talk about it on Instagram when it's
Well,
appropriate.
if I'll come across it, and I'll send it to you on Instagram or on over email, and then you can just
Okay.
plunk it in there. There's another one that's, I don't know whether it's going to be released or not, called Red Lone Star Bull, which is kind of it's a gay action hero kind of film.
Oh,
Yeah, it's kind of, he's a cowboy kind of, he's a it's kind of, it's fun. Who knows what's going to happen with that?
that does sound fun. I hope it
Yeah,
works
yeah.
out.
We'll hope for that. And then, who knows? Who knows what's around the corner?
And you think that you're going to have another production of Dear Mr. Williams?
Hopefully off Broadway. Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
All righty.